So I want to share a little bit about what happened in Flint, Michigan, and I want to inspire you to really do the same and to use your public health to do good in the world, because there's Flints everywhere. There's injustices everywhere. There are people who need the voices of public health, and that is what you are. We've all heard a lot about kind of the water crisis, and I want to give you a little background. So 10 parts per billion is the World Health Organization's action level for lead in water. And that means you need to do something. An action level, you need to take action. So that's a problem. If it's 10 parts per billion, the World Health Organization says that's not good. The Environmental Protection Agency has an action level of 15 parts per billion of lead in your water. 15 parts per billion is the EPA's action level. And just 2 weeks ago in Flint, Michigan, we had a home with a lead level in their water of 22,905 parts per billion. 22,905 parts per billion of lead in our water. It's difficult to even comprehend what that number could mean. So our friends at the EPA say it's like drinking through a lead-painted straw. And you never know when a piece of lead scale, a piece of lead rust is going to come off of our severely corroded pipes and into our drinking water and into the bodies of our children. And for 2 years, we're actually in our third year, we have been drinking through these lead-painted straws. And for 18 months, the people of Flint were told to relax, that everything was okay. And our children, our most developmentally vulnerable children, have been drinking through these lead-painted straws. And I want to tell you about one of my kids that I just saw in clinic. Her name is Carrington. She just came in for her 2-year checkup. And she's absolutely gorgeous. And she was running around the clinic, and her gown was flapping, and you could see her bottom, and she was gorgeous. And I put her up on the exam table, and I looked in her ears, and I told her I saw Elmo in her ears, and her eyes opened up wide. I can't believe you saw Elmo in my ears. And I examined her belly, and she giggled. And she took my stethoscope, and she tried to listen to her knee. And her physical exam checked out fine. And then her mom turns to me, and with a look that is all too familiar in Flint, and she turns to me with a look of fear and guilt and anxiety, and she asks me, "Is Carrington going to be okay? Is Carrington going to be okay?" This 2-year-old, for her entire life, during her most critical brain development, has been drinking through these lead-painted straws. So what do I tell this mom? Do I tell her about the epidemiologic studies on lead, its impacts on cognition and behavior? Do I tell her about the epigenetics of lead, that moms exposed to lead, you can actually see the DNA methylation changes in their grandchildren? Do I tell her that it's a irreversible potent neurotoxin and that the CDC says there's no safe level of lead? Do I tell her that she might be okay? Do I tell her that every state and federal agency that was supposed to protect her daughter failed? Do I tell her about 22,905 parts per billion? So how did we get at 22,905 parts per billion? So Flint, who's been to Flint? I know there's a few people that has been to Flint. So there's a lot of people have been to Flint. You just drive through, that's awesome. So we actually have a Flint native here. Where are you, Shelly? She's actually from Flint. So Michigan, so we hold up the hand, we're the mitten state. So Michigan is, there's other Michigan people, I read the thing. So yeah, Michigan people, awesome. So Flint is literally in the middle of the Great Lakes, all right? We are literally in the middle of the largest source of fresh water in the world, all right? And how did we get here? So what's Flint famous for? What do you guys, besides the water issue, what was Flint famous for? GM. So Flint was the birthplace of General Motors. We put America on wheels. So we were also the birthplace of unions. The sit-down strike, the UAW was born in Flint. And arguably, we were the birthplace of the middle class. The middle class was born in Flint. In the 1960s, Flint had the highest per capita income. We had the best public health indices. People moved to Flint for that American dream. And then what happened to Flint? Michael Moore, Roger Mead. Okay, so we lost those amazing manufacturing jobs. At one point, General Motors employed over 80,000 people in Flint, and that's down to less than 5,000. So with that came disinvestment, came unemployment, came poverty, came crime, came every disparity that you can think of. We have no grocery stores in Flint. The people in Flint, the zip code of Flint has a 20-year less life expectancy than a neighboring zip code. The military special ops medics, like the Army Rangers, Navy SEALs, the medics actually train in Flint because we have essentially a war zone on our streets. We are ranked 81 out of 82 in terms of Michigan counties by Robert Wood Johnson in terms of our health outcomes. So Flint was almost bankrupt. Lots of socioeconomic problems. And in 2011, Flint lost democracy. So in came a series of state-appointed emergency managers that was going to fix Flint. And the main goal was to save money, save money, save money, save money, save money. At all costs, save money. And in 2014, in an effort to save money, they severed a half a century relationship with Detroit, where we were getting fresh Great Lakes pre-treated water. And we started drawing water from the local Flint River. And right away, people complained. The water was brown. It looked gross. It smelled gross. It tasted gross. We had E. coli in the water. We had 3 boil advisories. Then they dumped a lot of chlorine in the water, and we had high levels of chlorine disinfectant byproducts, total trihalomethanes, a long-term carcinogen. And then we had Legionnaire's disease. We had the greatest outbreak of Legionnaire's in the entire country during this period. And then a phenomenal world corrosion expert from Virginia Tech from another land-grant university came up to Flint to see if there was lead in our water. And in the summer of 2015, he was telling us that there was lead in the water. And when pediatricians, when public health people hear lead, what do we do? What do you guys do when you hear about lead? We freak out. We freak out. So we freak out. The CDC says there's no safe level of lead. We know that its impacts on cognition and behavior. We know it's a well-known cause of it's an environmental injustice. So when we heard that there was lead in the water, it was a call to action to see if that lead in the water was getting into the bodies of our children. And I knew that I couldn't just say, hey, I feel that this might be a problem, or I think this might be a problem, or I'm worried about our kids. I knew I had to have data in my pocket, because you can't move mountains without data. So pay attention to your biostats courses and your epidemiology courses, because you need to know how to deal with data. So it was a perfect storm, really, for that lead to come out of our plumbing and into our drinking water. The Flint water was more corrosive than the Great Lakes water. But the necessary medicine, the treatment that you put in the water so that you don't have corrosion of lead into your water, was not added to this water. And then this water went into an infrastructure that had a lot of lead plumbing, and our population had dropped, and our water rates were super high, so people weren't using the water as much. So it was a perfect storm for that lead to get into the water and into the bodies of our children. And when we first discovered the increased lead levels in our kids, the lead levels in our children, the percentage of kids with elevated lead levels in Flint doubled. And in certain neighborhoods, it actually tripled. And it directly correlated with where the water lead levels were the highest. When we realized this, we knew right away that our focus had to be on the kids, on Carrington. Remember my 2-year-old? She was one of 10,000 kids in Flint under the age of 6. So we shifted from that individual patient to population health, to public health. We knew that we had to use our voices to advocate for those thousands of Carringtons who were exposed to the lead in their water. because as a public health trained pediatrician, my job is very much to take care of Carrington in front of me, but my job is to make sure that these kids have the brightest future possible. And what was happening in the water was threatening the tomorrows of all of our children. So now, today in Flint, things are starting to get better. They're working on the water. It's definitely not safe yet. But it's really kick-started an engine of advancement in public health around nutrition, around education, around health. We've created a public health initiative. We're calling it our Pediatric Public Health Initiative to flip the story, to change the trajectory of our children, to mitigate the impact of this exposure. And we hope to share our successes with all struggling communities, no matter where they are. And be certain Flint's future, Flint's tomorrow, will really be brighter than its yesterday ever was, because remember, we had a lot of problems yesterday. We had a lot of disparities. And sometimes you need a tragedy, or unfortunately, to bring a community together and to really see a brighter path forward. And the aftershocks of what we did and what we are doing in Flint really have rippled across the nation, from Chicago to Newark, New Jersey, to DC, to Sebring, Ohio, across the Rust Belt, and even to Los Angeles. People are now talking about lead in water, talking about aging infrastructure, talking about public health. So we've raised, rightly so, the national consciousness on the importance of public health. There's been disinvestment in public health for too long, and especially for our most vulnerable populations. But we have a lot of work ahead of us. And Flint has also raised an important question, and something that I think about often. Who is responsible for health? It's a big one out there. It's a big topic. It could be bigger in the election season. It's a big topic globally. Is it the federal government that's responsible for health? Is it our local government? Is it each one of us as mothers and fathers and as daughters and sons? Who's responsible for health when you talk about things like clean air, safe water, clean water? You know, it's tricky, it's political. All of public health is political, it's bureaucratic, it's personal. And as I think about this more and more, I have to tell you, I think the answer is all around us. Right now, you are responsible for health. You have chosen to put yourselves on the front lines of public health, on some of the biggest battlegrounds in the world. Whether you know it or not, by taking on the life of public health, you have put yourself on overwatch. You are now our sentinels, our guardians. Your responsibility is crucial and enormous. It's far-reaching, and it's as close to home as you can get. I thought I was safe. Most of us thought we were safe because we thought people were watching out for us. I knew those anonymous people were out there with their test tubes and their dials and their meters, and they were watching our air quality and our water quality. And I thought that the water that was coming out of my faucet was safe. We all think the water that's coming out of our faucet is safe. But I was wrong. I was so wrong. But I've learned something else too, and I've learned that I was responsible for health. Me, Dr. Mona, mom, taking care of sick little kids, shopping at the store, driving down the street, shoveling my driveway. I found out that the they who were responsible for public health was really me. But it's not about blame. It's not about yesterday. It's about moving forward. And I want you to look forward. And what I learned, and what you need to know, and what you have to understand, is that the they of public health is really you. And there is only you and only us, and no one else is responsible for health as much as we are. We are public health. You are public health. And when you think about it, why do we even call it public health? There really isn't private health. There's private health care, but there's not private health. Things like lead poisoning and malaria and Zika and HIV, they're all public health, and that's all your charge. And it's something that touches every single one of us every single day, both in the past, in the present, and in the future. And you have each chosen public health as your path, as your life work. And congratulations, there is not a more noble profession to be the guardians of public health for our world, and most importantly for our vulnerable communities. So I urge you to always remain public health. I urge you to remain curious, to remain vigilant, to keep asking why, this doesn't make sense, why. Use the incredible skills that you learned here in epidemiology, in biostats, and health policies, because they will come in handy in the future. And use those skills to make your communities healthier, especially our most vulnerable communities, our communities that have no voice, where they need your voice. So the world needs you. My little patient Carrington, my little 2-year-old, she needs you, because we cannot be a nation that accepts 22,905 parts per billion in lead in our water, because you have to be the ones that fight to make our communities safer and the future of our most vulnerable children safer. So in the future, someday, sometime after you graduate, somewhere, somehow, sometime, you will have an important choice to make. And it may not be fighting for a town that's been poisoned, has had a poisoned water supply. It may not be as momentous as that. But like I said before, there are Flints everywhere. There are injustices everywhere. There are people and places that will need you to be the voice of public health. So go out in the world and do great work. I expect that out all of you Buckeyes. So congratulations, Buckeyes, and thank you for having me here. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.